Yeah, cool. By the way, let me just say, how do I say your first name properly? Is it Aaron? Is it Ayron?
It's Ayron.
Ayron, okay.
Yeah.
See, I'm from a native reservation. I'm a Mohawk, and my traditional Mohawk name is Sogowanahowe. So
Oh,
when
okay.
I was in
So
high school,
Sogo Nahawe?
Sogowanahowe.
Sogo Wanahawe.
Yeah,
Sogo
exactly.
Nahawe. Yeah.
Sogowanahowe. So when I was in high school, I went to a white high school, and everybody always shortened it to Sugo. And they all had to or somebody would say Sago or Sago, or like nobody could ever get it. So I know what it's like to have like a weird kind of like pronunciation of a name, you
Oh
know?
yeah. Oh yeah. Especially when it's close to Aaron as mine is. So I do
Yeah.
that all the time. And then Key and Peele made me famous.
The Jeremy White Podcast. Tuesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
The Jeremy White Podcast.
With BOUSTAN. For the best Lebanese cuisine in Montreal, it's got to be BOUSTAN. Visit boustan.ca.
And loudtracks.com. Helping fans connect to their favorite artists. 100% high quality, officially licensed band merchandise that supports the artists you love. Visit our official band merch store at loudtracks.com. Watch the Jeremy White Podcast exclusively on YouTube.
My next guest is a really cool, exciting new artist. He signed to Big Machine, John Varvatos Records. His new album's in the works. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, his new singles, Take Me Away, The Boys from Puget Sound, available now. Making waves on radio across North America, by the way. Like, you're going like top 10 or something like that very soon with these songs. And it's all exciting. Welcome to the show, Ayron Jones. There he is.
Hey, what's up, man? Good to see you. Good to see you. It's good to be here.
Good to see you. It's good to meet you, man. I was just reading up a little bit about you. First of all, I discovered you through the music, which is probably the best way to discover somebody.
Awesome, man. That's the way I like it,
Yeah. So talking about your songs, Take Me Away. Were you a big Michael Jackson fan growing up?
Huge Michael Jackson fan. Yeah, that was my jam,
Because I get such a King of Pop vibe from that vocal performance in that song. And nobody really talks about how bluesy the King of Pop's voice really was.
Yeah, it's ironic because he came from Motown.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but he was, the cool thing that I loved about Michael Jackson was that even though he did come from this like Motown background, this blues background, he touched on all of it, which is why, they dubbed him the King of Pop, is because he, to me, pop is an all-encompassing genre. You've got elements from different genres that all blur together, and so with Michael Jackson, especially with that the Bad album, you know what I mean? Like that
Dude, that's what I was saying. You listen to like Take Me Away, and it's like I get such Dirty Diana vibes from it.
Yeah. It was inspired by Dirty Diana, man. That riff was inspired by Dirty Diana. So like that's
really
where that kind of originally had come from. It was inspired by that, and then my love of Dr. Dre, right? You listen to that little that vocal riff going into the second verse. That came from California Love,
Yeah.
So I'm like drop these little goose eggs, throughout the music just to kind of tell you where I came from. But yeah, definitely Dirty Diana was a huge influence on that. And vocally as a kid, I hated it, man. As a kid, people would be like, "You sound like Michael Jackson. You sound like Michael Jackson," which is
Why is that an insult? That would be an insult to me. I'd be like, "Thank you."
It's an insult when that person's still alive. It means you're trying to be like them, And so after Michael Jackson died and years have gone past, now it's not such an insult anymore to be, kind of compared to Michael. People know that's an influence now as opposed to you trying to copy someone. You dig what I'm saying? So
yeah. Well, that's it. It's like at the end of the day, as artists, you just kind of want to take all of your influences, and it's like your own music is a culmination of everything that you've been influenced by, and if you can express a lot of that in your own music, that's the biggest kudos. It's the biggest tip of the hat you can give to the people that influenced you growing up.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. That's the 100% truth, and it took me a long time to learn that, to realize that, and and once I did, it all kind of clicked, and I think that's a lot of what helped me put my music together to get signed by a major.
Yeah. Growing up, you were talking about the Michael Jackson influence, and I know you worked with Sir Mix a lot and stuff, but growing up in the Seattle kind of like scene, were you influenced by like any of the grunge stuff going up, or?
100%. You can't. It was impossible to grow up here and not be. You know what I mean? Like that was our school dances were grunge music in middle school, and
Yeah. Like, were you into like like Mudhoney and stuff like that, or?
I was into Mudhoney. I was definitely more into Nirvana because I'm just a kid here in the Pacific Northwest, and so whoever was the most popular at the time was really what was in our ears. But we heard it all, man. I mean, from Mudhoney to Soundgarden to Mother Love Bone to Pearl Jam to you know, you name it. I mean, the grunge was a huge, and even beyond grunge. I mean, you know, I grew up in a neighborhood that Jimi Hendrix came from. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
like Jimmy's influence, I think, in the music world is felt all over. But I don't know if people realize the impact that he had, particularly in Seattle, but in the neighborhood that I came from in Seattle, and
Mm.
the kind of guitar
What's the
players and
neighborhood called?
it's called the Central District.
Central District.
Yeah, so we call it, or just the CD.
Mm.
And so growing up in the CD, man, you know, you heard stories of Jimmy, man. You had cats trying to be like Jimmy, man. He was like a hero. I mean, he's a guitar hero around the world, right?
Right.
But when it came to where I came from, he was a local hero. He was the guy that cats looked up to and tried to get out the hood and tried to overcome the hardships. And you know, he was like our you know, our football player, our basketball star. That was our guy, man. You know,
Well, to be fair, I mean, it's Jimi Hendrix. You can't have a better,
absolutely.
you know, there's a
Yeah.
great, so as a guitar player I guess he would be like your biggest influence then.
Definitely, I don't know. So here's the thing about it. So definitely, he's definitely a huge influence, and mainly in the way that he played guitar. Was he uses this hybrid style of playing, which is kind of more taking a piano, almost like a pianist approach to uh to the guitar. You know, which is playing the chords and the solos at the same time.
Right.
And so I'm going to show you my grip here is like this claw hybrid grip where my thumb is
Very,
longer.
it looks like Hendrix. That looks
Yeah,
Hendrixy.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very like my I you know these two fingers. This is my capo here, and these three fingers are allowed to do whatever within the chords, you know. But
Mm.
because of that, like I was obsessed with three-piece bands. And when you have a three-piece band, you have to kind of cover all of this territory at once. And like you have a backup guitar player, so you need to learn how to be able to play the solo and the chords at the same time. And so I think that he was such a pioneer in that style that I just quickly adapted to it. So that was highly influential from that aspect, but also just the fact that he came from the neighborhood. I think a lot of things that I didn't realize growing up was how influential he was on to me just in the proximity, you know,
Right.
without just directly going into his music, but just being around the environment and the energy that he was encompassed by growing up, you know.
No, totally. And like, you know, you're talking about three-piece bands and, you know, trying to fill the sound with just you and two other guys. You know, Van Halen was sort of the same kind of thing. You know,
Mhm.
everybody talks about Eddie Van Halen and his, you know, legendary lead playing, but oftentimes gets sort of neglected for his rhythm playing. You
His
know,
rhythm playing. Mhm.
coming up in the scene, you know, playing all the clubs and doing all those covers, you know, he had to play all of those rhythm parts and solo at the same time and fill out the sound. And, you know, that was a big part. So guitar players that do come from three-piece bands and are trying to cover all those things, a lot of the time they're way more proficient than the actual wanker solo guitar players because your basis is in rhythm. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly, man. It's like learning how to cover all that space and like, especially when a three-piece band. I remember talking to my bass player about how we were going to cover all this space and like if I'm playing low, you can't play low. If I'm playing high, you can't play high, bro. You know what I'm trying to say? If I'm playing these notes up here, you got somebody's got to cover me back here. If I'm
yeah,
playing this track here, you got to cover this rhythm here. So you know, I think that my you know, and all the same way. I mean, a lot of the documentaries and a lot of the biographies that you'll read and documentaries you'll see, it'll talk about how some of the most proficient and some of the biggest musicians, most influential cats of all time, they started out doing covers in the clubs and doing all that. So I think a lot of that attrition. And a lot of the stuff that I learned early on in the coffee shops, in the you know three-piece band, in the blues club, you know, playing those
right.
3 hour gigs, you know, all of that was all teaching me how to you know put a song together. And not only that, like you know when you're covering hit music, when you're covering music that is timeless, you are picking up intrinsically just picking up what makes that music great, you know, in terms of
Yeah.
arrangement, in terms of vocals and all these things. And those are all, I mean, I much read something about how the Beatles, that's why their music was so great, was because they were already covering a bunch of different Motown pop music.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean,
and
there's
over
no better
time,
education in music to go into the clubs and play all those legendary songs. Like it's the
yeah,
best school of music you'd ever go to.
and then you take that and apply it to your original stuff
Yeah.
and over time what you'll see is that person will start to blossom and the things that they learned playing these covers are now being applied to their own original material and somehow these two worlds are colliding and you know it just takes a bit of luck and magic and there you go, you know.
Yeah. So that's why, you know, I was saying, you know, the King of Pop kind of vocal performance, and then you got the gritty down blues, grungy kind of rock going on. Like it's a really cool cross pollination of genres, and it's fantastic. So good stuff.
Thanks, man.
Is
Thanks,
that okay?
appreciate it.
Is that what we can expect? You know, are you working on like a full length record? I guess, you know, I know the world's like kind of shit right now, but it's like,
Yeah.
you know, I guess you kind of want to have a record to kind of go out on the road with at some point when touring comes back.
Yeah, well, we are working on the record. We're trying to get that wrapped up. And then also, we got some cool stuff happening here, man. I can't really announce anything yet. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening right this moment. We got a lot of great phone calls and meetings happening right this moment. So I'm soon to have some stuff out, some new stuff out for people. But you're just gonna have to sit and wait, maybe for a few more weeks here, just to know what's coming down the pike. But
Yeah.
I'm really excited for the next stuff. The record is shaping up to be a really great record, and for me, it feels like, my goal in life is always to create timeless music at some point or another. And I feel
Mm.
like I've created, done something that can be seen and accepted as a timeless record once it's heard. So I'm just excited for the stuff that's happening here, but we're definitely looking at a release here in 2021 and hopefully in the next 6 months or so.
So as an artist going into the studio and creating some original music, like, and taking all those influences you had, do you go in and like write everything on your own, or are you collaborating with like a Desmond Child, or like like a Diane Warren, kind of like an external songwriter to come in and help out with lyrics and melody, or is it all you? And like, do you have like a Bob Rock or a Mutt Lang like in studio? Like who you working with?
I do. I can't expose the people I'm working with just yet. But
Huh.
I take up a lot of the this album is a collaboration of some original stuff that I personally just taken and written all on my own, helped and co-produced and produced and put this original work together. And then some of it, just to get those extra flavors. 'Cause what happens as a songwriter is you'll get into your head about your stuff, and your stuff will start to sound the same, because you're so
Right.
in your head. So it's important to bring other cats with other experience and other tones and other approaches into the music to help round your stuff out. And what happens, and whenever you work with a songwriter like that, is that you'll sort of take on some of their stuff, and they'll take on some of your stuff, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
you're morphing and changing as a songwriter. So it was very important for me to work with some heavy hitting songwriters on this record, and so we've got some cats that really brought out some really cool tones and sounds and some approaches I don't think I would have otherwise found on my own.
Right. So I guess you've kind of discovered your sound then with these two singles that have come out. This is kind of like the vibe and approach for the record.
Oh, absolutely. It's part of the vibe and the approach to the record. I don't know. It's the record is it's surprisingly there's a big range of sounds to come out of the record, but it's all based in classic guitar rock. You know what I mean? So there is a wide range of tones that are going to come out of this record, though. I definitely, one of the things that helped me find my sound was an independent record that I did with Barrett Martin back in 2017. Worked on
Hmm.
2016, 2017, and I hadn't quite discovered my sound yet, but Barrett Martin is the drummer from Screaming Trees in Mad Season, and but he really brought me in. I mean, having the major label experience he had, he knew how to put together a major produced record. But I had this
Yeah.
indie budget, so here we are teaching me this stuff on the indie budget, and I don't have a sound yet. So, but he definitely helped me learn what it meant to put together a major record before I got signed to a major label. And so I think that was a moment I really started to discover my sound, and then back in years later, I signed in 2020, and so 3 years after the fact, that's it set me up for that moment. So I think I found my sound going into the record label,
Yeah.
and then it was a matter of figuring out, songwriting wise, what else I wanted, how else I wanted to sound.
Talk about being signed to John Varvatos Records, because first, I'm a big John Varvatos fan. I broke up my best John Varvatos today, so
Nice.
I've got my jacket, everything. Talk about the process of going from just being Ayron Jones to being signed to John Varvatos Records. Like that's pretty cool with Big Machine. It's like to be like a bluesy rock driven guitar guy to being on one of the biggest country labels. Like it's
Yeah,
you know
man. Yeah. Country label with a rock imprint, So
yeah.
it's been, I don't think I could have found a more perfect place for my first major, to be honest with you. Um, you know, Even though Big Machine itself is a major record label, it still has an indie sensibility to it, and
Mm.
it allows artists to grow and still, even though I feel like I discovered my sound, even the input from the label has even brought that even further to help me further discover what it was like to record a major record, to help me further discover what it meant to really have something on the charts and how to conduct myself within that. So I couldn't have found a better home, honestly. I mean, Scott Borchetta and John are two people that just really love music.
Yeah.
John especially is the who's who of rock and roll, man. I mean, the cat probably knows more people in rock and roll than anybody
And
on the
dresses them too.
Yes, and he dresses them right. That's right. And then, of course, you have Scott and his years of experience. having worked with the industry's top artists, so like that you can't go wrong with that. And then I also have to give a shout out to my team over at Indigo, in the experience there. So all in all, I have a great team of people from label on down to management on through and through, man, to agents and
Yeah.
everything. It's been a journey, man. I was an independent musician and an independent artist up to this point. I was successful at it. I was making some decent money and found myself doing some little indie tours, opening for some of the biggest acts in rock and roll history, man. I got to work with Run
Yeah,
DMC.
opening up for Guns N' Roses and stuff. It must. What's the biggest difference between going from playing, the clubs as an indie artist to now being on a label and then, kind of like opening up for Guns N' Roses and opening up for these major artists, which in turn will eventually be you at some point, hopefully, when touring comes back. But it's like, talk to me about the difference, just psychologically from an artist standpoint, being in the clubs and paying your dues and working your way up and being on a stadium stage and, opening up for one of the biggest selling rock bands of all time.
Yeah, well, so the way I look at it is like this. It's like, especially if you are coming from the indie point, from the indie perspective, um, there's different ways to look at it, right? You can look at it and say, I'm coming from this indie perspective and I'm just here at the clubs. Or you can look at it as I'm coming from the indie perspective with the idea of going to a major. And
Yeah.
if you're looking at it from that perspective, what ends up happening is like you see glimpses of that as you go, right? So you'll start out, you'll be in this little club over here, right? You'll be playing for 3 hours at some piano bar, down in Pioneer Square in
Making
front of a bunch
$5 off the door.
yeah, $5 off the door, a bunch of drunk cats. Everybody's having a good time. We're all drunk. Nobody's making money.
Yeah.
Great. But you'll see, you'll see glimpses of it though. You'll see all of a sudden you get a phone call. Hey, you got a call to open up for BB King. So there's a glimpse of it there.
Mm,
Even with the Guns N' Roses look like that was even though that was our first time working with Guns N' Roses, that was my second time on the main stage at the Gorge.
mm.
And so, I'd seen glimpses of it, but once you hit the stride, once you get to that point where you were just that's strictly what you're doing. Hopefully at that point, going from an indie musician to a major, you will have become more accustomed to that. You know what I mean? So luckily, I've had some time to gradually get used to it. I will say the first few times I had an opportunity to open up for a bigger act, it wasn't always the best look. It didn't always pan out that well.
Oh,
You know,
really?
it just takes practice, like anything. It takes practice, man. Like I look back at some
Well,
of the
what
great.
happened? What, you went on stage and you froze, or like
No,
what
you
happened?
don't freeze, but like little things like oh, you're not really thinking about your guitar tone, but it's crap. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
you're not thinking about you're not thinking about your set list. Oh, you missed a song. Like little things like that. So, I'd say 2017 was really what helped shore all that up. Which was that um, I went on a tour opening for we did a national tour with Theory of a Dead Man. In the first half of that tour, we were the direct support act, and I think that is what really was like, dude, this is the level you need to perform at every single time, and that shored me up as an artist, honestly,
Yeah.
and as a musician, and got me ready for the main stage, man. Got me ready for these big stages. So
Amazing, man. It's just so cool to be able to go and, have those experiences and really hone your craft. And then by the time that you are, on the main stage, you kind of are at that level where it's like you're just firing on all cylinders.
yeah, man, I've heard George Foreman say it once. I'm a big fan of boxing too, and he says you can't get into the ring if you ain't wet. You can't get in the ring if you ain't throwing a few punches at first. So you definitely gotta you can't just it's hard for artists, hard for anybody to deal with extreme change, right? You can't just go from hot to cold all of a sudden because
No.
you'll scatter, it'll
That's-
break.
yeah. You can't just be
It
thrown into
takes a
the
while.
bullpen without any experience.
Exactly, man. Oh, let's bring out this pitcher with a cold arm and see how he does. It's not gonna work, man. It's not gonna work, bro. You know what I'm saying? I don't care who you are. You can't bring out your star. Oh yeah, bring the star pitcher out here. Oh, he
Yeah.
hasn't warmed up yet. Oh, he'll be fine.
Dude, but you know what? Hey, Def Leppard's been playing with a one-armed drummer since 1986.
This is
So
true.
no
This is
excuses. No excuses.
no excuses. Exactly, man. Exactly.
Talk about your guitar playing and your guitar tone for a second. So how are you getting those really cool, like the guitar tones? Some of the solos, you got like the octave on there. It's very, Jack Whitey kind of sound, gritty, blues rock tone. What's going on with the guitar rig? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, man. I was so and when I'm speaking about like kind of opening for bigger acts and things like that, I've crossed paths a few times and had opportunity to open up a few shows with Lucas Nelson and the Promise of Real a few years back, and I'll never forget I got a chance to play Little Wing with Lucas on stage
Oh,
at
wow.
a place always called Whiskey Jack's over here in the in the mountains of Idaho. I kind of forget what the name of the
Whiskey
cemetery
Jacks.
is.
Sounds like a good club.
Oh, it's a club. It's actually it's a surprisingly big music venue for how small the town is.
Wow. Well,
But
if it's
so
a small town, you kind of got one good place. The other ones are
yeah,
crap.
it's a ski town, so it's a bunch of rich cats come through and get wasted
Yeah.
and
Like if
good
you come
times.
from a small town, you've either got like, your like good club, and then you got like the Legion.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, man. And I remember this is specifically happening. So mind you, I played the bars and the clubs here in Seattle, so I never really paid much attention to my guitar tone. It was just get
Hmm.
out there, make sure the guitar works, and
Yeah, but when you're going out and playing a show with like somebody like Slash, it's kind of like, oh, I better up my wall game a little
exactly,
bit.
exactly, man. And so opening for Lucas, I picked up this tip from his guitar tech, and that he was using stereo amps. I remember we were on stage, and I was like, my tone couldn't even come close to what he was doing. So
Yeah.
he was using stereo amplifiers going through them at the same time, and that was the moment I decided that I would never be on stage without using stereo amps or some variation of that, Marshall stack or whatever it has to be.
Yeah, and especially as a three-piece band, just you as the sole guitar player, and you were talking about how you're trying to fill the sound, playing the chord, and soloing at the same time. If you're using a stereo setup, it just helps to fill up the spectrum
Boom,
so
makes
much.
it huge, man.
Makes you
And
fatter, and
that was and so for me, once that was a big part of discovering my sound, was when I found that going stereo through the amp is what makes a bigger sound and creates all these harmonics and different things that you normally wouldn't
yeah,
get. That's what really helped me define my sound. So I'm a pure believer in that your tone comes in from your hands first, and if it can't come from your hands, it doesn't matter if you have a distortion pedal on or the octave pedal or whatever. So um it's just that the years of playing that stereo setup, man, and then just being unhinged as well, man. I mean, like, one of the things I love about those old grunge records is that they sound so sloppy, but it's done in such a really particular way. They sound sloppy, but they're very very formulaic.
yeah,
And so I love distortion, I love feedback. I use all these things in my music and in my sound to create this sense of angst and urgency, all while still maintaining this respect for the old blues guitar players and for the old rock guitar players and all that, man. So my tone is really is just based off of that, man. I don't know. I really base my everything off the Seattle sound and trying to be a continuation of that and different
yeah.
generations of that.
Well, I mean, dude, as a guy coming from Seattle, I'm surprised you're not being produced by Butch Vig and on Sub Pop at this point.
Yeah, man.
Steve Albini drums, man. Come on.
Ironically enough, man, my second independent record was mixed by Jack and Dino. Ironically enough.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
That was a good sound for sure.
Oh, it was great, man. It was a great sound, and like I said, and that was just the beginning. I mean, that was just me discovering my sound, so I couldn't even imagine now what that would sound like. Maybe that's a conversation piece right there. Maybe
Well,
I should think about that.
yeah, dude, you got to have these talking points. Next interview, have them ready.
All right, I'll make sure to.
I'm helping you out. I'm coaching.
Thanks.
These are the questions. Awesome, man. Well, this is really cool. It's great to talk to you. If you grabbed your guitar right now, what's the first lick you play?
I always go to this inverted harmonic thing I do, man. Like not inverted E major thing I always do. It's really beautiful. It's like going to going to an E major from that E major bar chord on the seventh fret, and then you invert the bass note, and you go up to E F. It would go to the G, and then but you're still holding the chord. I'm sorry, it's a whole. I can show you more than I can hear.
Oh yeah, sure. Grab an axe.
Right now I'm
Oh, beautiful strat.
yeah, thanks, man. So I would go here, and I'm not sure if you can hear that too well, but
So
yeah,
Hendrix.
that's normally what I go to. I feel like the whole, especially when you're in standard tuning, the whole guitar just is centered around that little piece right there, and from
Right.
that you can go minor. That's not a very good representation, but
Sounds so tasty, man. Yeah, I just love those, down south blues kind of licks.
Absolutely, man. So that's typically what I stick to. But I cover everything, man. I mean, like years of doing covers and then opening and playing with other bands, and my first experience with anything major was working in 2011. Before I did anything, I was still working the clubs.
Yeah.
I got called to come and play with this group called Deep Cotton, who was associated with Wonderland. Wonderland is Janelle Monáe's label.
Okay.
And so my first tour was on a bus opening for Janelle Monáe, with this
Wow.
this rhythm guitar player for this punk group out of Atlanta, man. So
damn,
this insanity, yeah. And so like when
got so many tales, dude. It's like
I've had probably one of the more interesting. I mean, I'm a very
it's an interesting career.
Yeah, it's been an interesting career, man. I try to, and I'm a pretty private person, especially because, I got kids and I got a wife and a family, and like,
Yeah.
and especially in these troubled times, man, I first of all, I don't think it's very fair to expose my kids to that level of fame and exposure
Right.
without their knowledge of what I'm putting them into. So if they're 13, 14 years old, they're like, hey, Dad, I want to be on all your stuff. Okay, cool. That's your decision now. You can actually
Right.
make that decision. But I kind of realized recently in that though, in that privacy and that mystery that I've created about myself, there are all these stories that are untold now that throughout the music industry, from working with Chris Ballou to conversations with Run DMC and
Hmm.
Professor Griff from Public Enemy, and having worked with Los Lonely Boys, man. I've worked with
Those Lonely Boys. Jeez.
yeah, I worked with Living Color. I've worked with all these bands, and this is just as an independent artist before I got signed. So I've been around the block for a minute before I got signed to a major, and now here we are, and I'm still sitting at, I think I'm sitting at top five here right now on Billboard
Yeah.
and Media Base right now, and so it's just been an interesting ride to say the least, but I'm just happy to be here, and I'm finally happy to be able to share some of these stories.
Well, it's awesome, man. And 2021, hopefully we'll get back on the road. Maybe the vaccine will make a dent, and we'll get back to doing some gigs. How
I
did
think
you?
that's anticipated. Yeah.
Yeah, did you have like a big tour planned? Like, where you like was 2020 going to be a big year for you on the road?
I'll put it this way, man. As big as it got with just the radio single, man, I think it could have gotten even bigger had we been able to tour. And because
Have you
my
been able
the,
to?
yeah, the bread and butter for me has always been the live show. The live show is where people are really making an impact, and so for me, it's always been about trying to figure out how to take that live energy and put it on a record, which
Mm,
takes years of studying music and understanding like the different tricks of the trade, and who did what to help create that tone and that sound, and to create that live feeling experience. So I think that if had 2020 been open though, I just signed a big new agent, and we were rocking and rolling, man. I think we were ready to really blow this thing up, but
yeah.
COVID hit, and plans changed. But there's a lot to be said about the fact that even though the plans have changed, I'm still sitting here at the top of the charts, man, and we made a lasting impact in the music industry. So,
Yeah.
and to continue that, hopefully that trend continues with the next few releases here too. So.
Well, dude, I'm very excited to see what's going to happen with you now that you're signing everything, getting, mainstream exposure. Cause it's like, there's not a lot of guitar players that are getting attention. And I like it when guitar players get attention.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think that was it's important too. I've been missing a lot of guitar rock, and I actually, regardless of what people think about it, man, I know a lot of cats, especially in the purest of rock and roll, are really not too happy about Miley Cyrus and
Uh,
cats like MGK getting to the
yeah, but
top
you
of
know
the.
what? Those are all the same guys complaining about Ace and Peter not being in Kiss.
Thank
So
you.
it's fun, guys.
That's so funny. Oh man, yeah, that's true, man. And so when you that's so funny.
But it's
Uh,
true, I just
so
interviewed
so
Gene Simmons last month and we were talking about that. And I was saying, we were talking about, like critics and stuff. And I was like, yeah, but Gene, at the end of the day, it's the same guys that are still pissed about Ace and Peter. And he's like, you're absolutely right. That's true. Exactly. Uh, that's the great thing about life. Life is like a menu. There's things that you like to order and there's things that I look at. I'm like, blood, it's disgusting. Why would you eat that?
Right. That's
It's
so funny.
classic Gene, but
That's
that's
so
it.
true, bro.
Like you said, there's the purists and then there's the realists. And I'm just a fan. Like, I don't see genre. I just hear music. And if I hear something, you look at Miley Cyrus's album that came out, it's so rock. It's so pop. It's so country. It's just
Oh, it's all of
music,
those things, man. I love
you
it.
know?
I really do love it, man. I love it, and it's just the fact, regardless of how anybody feels about that, these people have opened the door for guitar rock to come back, man.
Yep.
And so I feel like it's a really good time for me to come into the door and bring my version of that guitar sound in 2020, man, and that's gonna be really important, I think, for a lot of people, man. I know how for me, just coming up and some of the stories told and take me away, but for me, just coming up and kind of going through what I did, guitar was so important in getting me to this point in my life, and not to get too political, but just being a Black American in this country, regardless of what people think about it, my experience as a Black American and plenty of other people's experiences as Americans and people of color in this country, there's a lot of
Yeah.
hardships to overcome, all the things that may be invisible to people that we have to deal with. And so guitar that was my wings of freedom, man. And I knew that, like, if I put my head down and put everything I had, my emotions, my feelings, into this obsession of mine, that it was going to take me to new heights, and I was going to recreate a name for not just myself but for my family, and hopefully inspire others to do the same. And I'm at this point now, this precipice to which I can do that, you know. So that's what's really important to me right
Well, listen, man, you said it all.
now.
This is really cool. I can't wait for the album to come out. So check out the 2 singles right now. Take Me Away, Boys from Puget Sound on Big Machine, John Varvatos Records. Ayron Jones, big album coming out this year. Catch him on the road. Are you going to be headlining if the tour goes as planned? Or are you going to be on some big support slot?
You know, I don't know yet, man. I think there's a little bit of conversation with the support slot, and I think there's been some things thrown around about perhaps maybe headlining some stuff. But you know, all in all, we're not really gonna know until things start opening back up. And I think right now,
Yeah.
the music industry is setting up for late summer, early fall. So we'll have to see what gets squeezed in before the end of the year, man. You know.
Yeah. Well, dude, I'm looking forward to seeing you live because there's that your kind of music, your guitar music. It sounds great on the record, but there's nothing that beats that live vibe and feeling, you know, just being in that room and hearing that, like you said, that stereo guitar sound just hitting you in the chest.
Hitting you in the face, man. It's my sound. You know, I'm a big fan of hip hop too, especially with the West Coast hip hop, old school West Coast hip hop, man. Like that sound, the bass tone is like everything to me. So like when
Yeah.
you listen to my new record, you're really gonna notice that those tones are brought out in a very subtle way to nod to my affiliation or my appreciation and affinity for hip hop.
Oh, it's so great, man. Well, it was so great to chat with you, and it's so great to meet you, man. This is really cool. We'll have to meet in person at some point.
Oh, we definitely will. You know, as long as the world doesn't end, whatever. You know, whatever comes first.
But it's a couple of days. Trump's out of office. The vaccine's rolling out. I think
We'll get there. Comet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The Earth just opens up and
crashed down the middle. Okay, well, you know,
the aliens are finally coming to save us.
Did you? Okay, so speaking of that, do you know that we're supposed to be told about aliens in the next 6 months?
Yeah, I saw that like on Facebook or Twitter, and I was like, okay, but this isn't news. Like, we know they're real. Like, we know they're there.
It's the first time in a package, a congressional package, that they told the government that they have to tell the people about aliens, bro. So like, it's in the stimulus package that the next 6 months that Congress has to be briefed on aliens, and they're gonna basically disclose this to the public. We'll see what happens. They're probably just gonna be like, yeah, you know, aliens, whatever, man. So we decided to build this space wall so they don't come in and try to take our freedom.
Yeah. We'll have Trump on TV going, you know, E.T., he tried to come, he didn't have papers. I didn't let him in. Oh my God.
Oh my God. I commanded the Space Force. I commanded the Space Force to build a wall in space.
We built the most beautiful wall from Mars to home. It's the Trump Hotel and Wall Casino.
Oh, too great.
I had to borrow money from the folks on Jupiter, but that's okay.
That's okay. Jupiter's going to pay for it.
Oh my God. What do you think they're going to say in that package? Do you think they're going to say, okay, listen, guys, there's aliens. We've been hiding it. It's true. We don't have a plan. They are going to come and invade us at some point. They're actually running the whole show right now behind the scenes. Like, what do you think is going to happen?
What I think is going to happen, I think what they're going to say, well, first of all, if you're a transdimensional being, I don't know what the hell you're going to want from the planet Earth.
Well, no, it's it.
You can fold space and time and travel across the galaxy. I'm not really sure we have much to offer you.
Or to other galaxies.
Yeah, I think so. Here's what I'm thinking. This is just based on what that dude from Israel, the high up dude from Israel, just said, based on some other documentary. And he's also, you know, as I say this, I say with a grain of salt, because these are also things that have been thrown around the alien conspiracy theorists were, and I'm, you know, I know a lot of people are tired of conspiracy theorists at this point. It's been thrown around right. It's been thrown around the alien community, conspiracy theorist community for a while, that the federal government has known for a long time that aliens exist, and there's a federation of planets and a federation of interdimensional travelers.
Right.
And that they have been waiting for us to come to a certain understanding to allow us into this federation. But they have some sort of deal with the governments of the world to make sure that this information isn't disclosed until the public is ready to receive it, you know. So if I had to guess, I would guess along something of those lines. I mean, like, that sounds like a logical thing. Like, oh, cool, transdimensional space beings think that the Earth apes aren't ready to learn about space. Got it.
A far superior unadvanced race that is Earthlings. We're just so unadvanced compared to, you know, aliens come down here, look at our iPhone, they're like, what is this?
You guys want to just do this thing?
You don't just like talk to each other like through your like.
No.
You know. Mind if I aliens. So you're into aliens, right? So it's like, are you into like paranormal stuff too, or?
I'm less into paranormal stuff these days. At one point in my life, I definitely went down the rabbit hole, mushrooms and conspiracy theories. I've been
Yeah,
there, but I'm less of a conspiracy theorist these days, and I'm more of a um, I can't even just say realist because even realist just means that I'm just
yeah,
what
but
you
what does
see.
that mean to be a realist? Like, if there's
I don't
proof of
know.
something, you can't, you can't, you can't,
Exactly. So
you know?
but I definitely believe that there are dimensional things that we don't understand. And that I think that's very obvious. I think
Yeah.
anybody in the science community and anywhere could tell you that. I don't necessarily believe in the paranormal. The paranormal just means that we can't explain it. I mean, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, if you were like, you brought a cell phone to someone or made a phone call to somebody 2,000 years ago, they'd be like, oh, it's paranormal.
Yeah, right.
It's
That's
just
it.
a science you don't quite understand yet. So I
Oh, when
think
I
that
say paranormal, it's like, have you ever been visited by a past loved one in a dream or like stuff like
yeah,
that?
yeah, I smoke weed in my dreams with loved ones all the time. Hey man, you good? You dead still? Oh, you dead? All right.
I'm watching what's going on down there, man. Not looking good.
It's not looking great, man. Hey man, you got it, pimping. you know,
Oh my
So
God.
I do believe that there are interdimensional. I think that we as beings are transdimensional. I think that there's multidimensional dimensions to us, especially when it pertains to consciousness. I'm a firm believer that energy is something that it can be manipulated through if you have a certain understanding of the universe and a certain understanding of these tools. I mean, if you look at every pretty much scripture and spiritual book has its own version of the story,
Well,
but
that's
there
it.
are very specific things in these books that pertain to all the books. And
Yeah.
so
Well, listen,
there's
there's a God and there's an afterlife in
yeah,
every story you listen to, and we all came
absolutely.
from somewhere. So
hmm And there's a way to utilize the universe. There's a way to ask for the universe's help. There's a way to do all these things. These are all tools
yeah,
that we've been given. And I think that if you can understand, like for me, I understand that this is my understanding of it is that everything is frequency, everything is vibration, and if that you can tap into those understandings of those vibrations, those frequencies, there's nothing that you can't do or accomplish for yourself, whether it be good for the good or for the bad. And so
yeah.
I think that someone, for instance, like Donald Trump, has whether he has a conscious understanding of it or not, he understands something about these energies and these powers that he knows how to possess.
Mhm.
And so for myself, even I mean, like I said, coming from the hardships of just being a Black American, regardless of whatever people think about that. In my experience, it's like you got to believe in a little bit of magic to get through, man, because the cards are stacked against you.
Well, that's it. As for myself as an indigenous person, growing up Mohawk on a reservation just outside of Montreal in Canada, it's like our people are constantly faced with that struggle of like, do we believe and trust the government or do we continue to follow our ways and trust our own intuitions and our people? You look at what's going on down south, right now with the coronavirus pandemic. There's reservations in Dakota, Navajo Nation out there. They're just being decimated by the pandemic, but the governors and like the government's not doing anything about it because the Indians, they can do their thing. They want to self-govern. Well, then they can take care of themselves. But then you have first language speakers and elders just dying left and right, which in turn is kind of decimating the culture
Yeah.
and the people. It's like, and not to have that. So what, as indigenous people, we believe in the spirit world and the creators put us here, and we believe in the connection with the spirit world and our ancestors, and they're going to give us and guide us through the struggles that we're going through. And so it makes sense, like you said, to believe in that sort of stronger being out there.
Yeah, I have ties to my own history in Native America too, man. And my dad, we don't know much about him. We do know that his mom was full on Native American. She was from the
Really?
Pacific Northwest. Yeah, and his dad was Black. His mom was full on Native American. And we know I just found out recently that on my mom's side of the family, our tree splits, and one side, if you fall one side, it just falls into slavery, and this other side also kind of falls into slavery, but in a really interesting way. So my family, I'm a descendant of the Muskogee Creek people of
Wow.
uh, of Oklahoma, and so what happened, a lot of people don't realize this, but that there was because of the infighting within the Native nations, some of the Native nations actually fought on the side of the Confederacy during the Civil War,
Mm.
and they owned slaves. And so with that came after the Civil War was over, they were forced to give their slaves membership into the tribe. And so for generations, you had Black Americans that were growing up on these reservations. They spoke the native tongue, they spoke all of that. And then in 1979, they created this Dawes rule that said that you had to be a certain percentage in order to receive a blood to
Mm.
receive, which was basically just a way to excommunicate anyone who was not.
Excommunicate people that are using the rights,
Yes,
It's the same thing
exactly.
over here, in Canada. We, for the longest time, there was this rule of, it was a blood quantum rule. And you had to have a certain amount of blood, but it didn't actually, get a blood test. Like, you had to look at your family tree and say, okay, in my community, for example, you have to have the 4 great grandparents to meet criteria to be
Crazy.
a part of our community and a part of our, the Ganawage Ganyonkehaga registry, as they call it.
You gotta start writing this down for me, dog.
Yeah, it's very bizarre, dude. My town, we have a rule. It's called marry out, get out, and the whole thing. If you marry like a non-native person, you get excommunicated from our community. It's the most racist shit ever.
Oh my God, dude, that's terrible. And that's what I'm saying. So this is, I had
He's
this
like the extremist, right? Like, in every community, in every culture, you have them.
Oh, absolutely. I saw a documentary recently about Hindu extremists that if you saw seen eating a cow or doing something, abusing a cow in some kind of way, that they would literally kill you. And these are fascist Hindus, man. You know what I'm saying? And so every culture is gonna extremism is not tied to one color or another. It's tied to every single culture, every single being, every single person can be
Yep.
an extremist. You either have the dark side of the force, you have the light side of the force. Either one can take you over at any time, And
Yep.
so, but yeah, man, I had a reckoning with a lot of that. I mean, just being an American in this country and just kind of knowing that I came from my ancestors fought for the Confederacy. I have ancestors that fought for the Confederacy. I have ancestors that fought for the Union. And here I am, a descendant of all these factions in America. You know what I mean? And so I had this reckoning. I had a reckoning about that, man, which is like I realized that as much as we tried to look, I think we've been looking at the wrong problem for a long time. Color is definitely an issue in America. It is an issue because this country was founded on the idea that color was somehow supposed to be an indicator to your wealth, to who you are as a person, and all these stereotypes that come with being a color. I mean, you got to remember, at some point in America, there were white slaves. At some point in America, there were indentured servants and all these people that had pretty much the same status as slaves.
Yeah.
And this country didn't want to see those people join together. This is why we had things like in the 1920s when they outlawed. Think about this, bro. They outlawed weed in America. It wasn't because they knew it wasn't a dangerous drug. They outlawed weed because white kids were going to jazz clubs and smoking weed with black musicians. Holler. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So
it's like it's been a racist country ever since the colonizers showed up here and thought, hey, we were Indians. India. Okay.
Right. How can you be Indians and then the Indians be Indians and the West Indies are Indians too?
It's so fucked up. And then talking about what was I going to say about that and about the weed? Oh, another example. Okay, I'll give you an example of that. Tobacco is a traditional Native American product that was ours. We introduced it to to everybody that came over here. But now in Canada, for example, they criminalize native tobacco because we don't pay taxes on it. So now our product that we gave to them, we are now criminalized for. So if you come on my native reservation, we got smoke shops, all along down our main highways, and 90% of our clientele are non-natives that come into the reservation and support local business. But it's not illegal for us to sell it to you. It's illegal for you to buy it because you're not paying taxes. And in turn, us not remitting the tax to the government. Henceforth, illegal. You're cheating the government out of tax fraud. Yeah. It's crazy, man. It's crazy shit. Crazy. Dude, talking about slaves and all that, my people, I live with my grandparents, their first language speaking Mohawks. They were both victims of residential schools. Do you know anything
about residential schools, man? Yeah, that's true.
And dude, those were the last one closed in like 93 or 94 in Canada. It was ethnic cleansing right up until the 90s. They would literally ship natives up north to these schools run by the Catholic Church in turn with the government of Canada, and they would essentially beat the Indian out of you. There's so many unaccounted for missing and murdered indigenous children from all those years with no paperwork to prove, just ripped from homes. And
I remember Trudeau crying about it, bro, and I remember having mixed feelings about that. I was like, "What are you crying about, bro?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Like, you're sitting here crying over this thing as you stand and represent the very government that cast these actions. Now you just apologize for it, and I have
Yeah.
mixed feelings. I
It's,
remember that. I do.
yeah. So it's like, and what does the apology do? Okay, well, actually do something about it.
Yeah,
Give us
do
our rights
something,
back.
man.
You know,
It's a lot of pomp and circumstance when it comes to government, man, and we all know that. But like that's the thing, man. It's like
they're all puppets.
if you learn the government's game, man, you can be successful at anything. I mean, I think a lot of the music world, especially as a performance artist, bro, like you can take a lot of that. That's what these guys are. I mean,
Yeah,
they're performance artists, man. Like that's what they do on a daily basis. They get up there to speak in front of the public,
it's
tell you one
showbiz.
thing, and then go do another. It's a show. It's all show business,
Mitch
man. You know.
McConnell's like the Madonna of the Republican Party.
He sure is, bro. And I can't hate him for that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't like his policies. The guy probably has some ideas I don't agree with. I probably wouldn't just go like hang out with him. And I don't know. I don't even know, to be honest with you, because I bet you this anything. I bet you sat with Mr. McConnell, and be like, Mr. McConnell's kind of a tight guy.
Well, that's it, right? On TV, he's kind of he's a
He's a
shitty
dick
evil
on TV,
person.
but this guy's all right, man. It's hard to say because you just don't know, man. I've met plenty of people. I've traveled this country before Trump came into office. Even while he was in office, bro, I traveled all over this country, man. I met people from different walks of life. I was there during the Blue Lives Matter thing, the BLM thing. I saw,
Yeah.
and people you would look at on TV like that guy's a fucking dick, and then you sit with him and be like, wow, man, this guy's all right. He's okay,
Yeah, he's okay. How come you don't portray that character on TV though?
yeah. But you sit there and you realize, like, man, like everybody, we need to have more. We need to have this coming together moment where we realize that like maybe we're not as different as we keep portraying ourselves to be,
Yeah.
and the further isolation of ourselves is what's creating more of these disbeliefs in each other. You know what I'm trying to say? It's like, and so I love, honestly, to be honest with you, I love conservative parts of the country. I don't agree with any conservative policies. I don't agree with any of that crap. I am a
Well, it's like
minority.
anything else. Some are good, some are bad. It is what it is.
Right, right. I'm a minority in America. Those policies don't serve me. I don't think they really serve the country. I vehemently disagree with that. I disavow and denounce any form of racism, white supremacy, or whatever. But at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, I can say that there's something really special about being able to roll into a small town, play a show, and then sit at the bar and talk with the local cats, about just their way of life, man. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
it's so special to be able to do that. I mean, I live in the city. I live here. I'm right here in Seattle, Washington, man. Right in the heart of the city, and to be able to go to a small town like Winthrop, Washington, or to be able to be in some small town in Idaho or Montana, man, it's very special, man.
Yeah.
And there's something so American about that to me, and where it's like, I don't know, man. I think that white supremacy is a separate issue of rural versus the city. You know what I'm saying? And that's we're having this reckoning right now with white supremacy that has needed to happen for a long time, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's honestly a threat to everyone's well-being. They want to change your way of life. They want you to fit into this idea that superior. There's some sort of superiority complex, and I think it's just high time that we just we nip it in the butt, man. You know what I'm trying to say? We nip it in the butt and say, like, it's over, it's done. Let's move
Yeah.
forward. We're always gonna these ideas of racism aren't gonna change, right? That's not gonna change, man.
Yeah.
This is an
There's always
ideology.
going to be racists.
Always, it's been a thing since the beginning of fucking time.
Yeah,
Okay, we
absolutely.
found ways to make ourselves be different from them, whether it be from eye color. I mean, you saw what's her name? It's Jane something, Jane Elliott, right? Jane Elliott does this experiment where she has the blue-eyed people and the green-eyed people, and these are white people going at it, man. They're like, how could you treat the green-eyed people this way and the blue-eyed people don't get it? I don't like the way you're treating me. It seems unfair. Welcome to racism.
Welcome to racism. Yeah, yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God! If it wasn't for skin color, it would be that. If it wasn't for that, it'd be hair. If it wasn't for these people, it would be height. We'd find something, some reason, some ism to separate ourselves. These things are always
My
going to
cock
happen.
is bigger than yours.
Yeah. It swings to the left. Yours swings to the right.
How dare you? How dare you? It's pointing up. Look.
We're gonna find some reason, but I think that if we're going to continue a society that in which we all can have an opportunity to prosper and thrive, man, we're gonna need to just decide that some things just should not be here. And
No.
I think the idea of white supremacy just has to go, man. And it doesn't. I don't care if that means that you're gonna love me or hate me for that. I want you to be successful. I want all people of color to be successful. I know that this idea that one person is better or superior to another person, it only makes your country weak. It makes your people weak, and it doesn't. It makes you broke too. By the way, that makes people. I mean, when people
Yeah.
aren't accepting, it makes you broke, man. If you want to see an economy thrive, just be cool, baby. Be cool. And this is why I'm so happy weed is on the way. I mean, earlier this year, House of Representatives in America they signed a bill to send up to the Senate about federally legalizing weed.
Right.
Now that the Democrats have a minority, a majority control of the Senate, just a fraction of majority of control in the Senate, there's a good chance weed is going to become a federally legal product in America. And I don't think that people realize what that's going to do for this country. I really don't. I don't think, because if there's one thing that we can all agree upon is that weed is awesome.
Weed's good. Weed's good.
Weed is good.
Yeah.
Weed is awesome, and I think that and I think once that happens, I think that and mind you, it's like I said earlier, they outlawed weed so that white kids and black kids wouldn't hang out together and listen to music and smoke weed. There you go. Enough said, right?
Racist legislation, legalize weed, and racism.
And racism, legalize weed. Smoke with your homies. There you go. That's what it is, man. And bang. Have lots of sex.
Weed, sex, and music. There you go.
That's another thing. And here's another thing that you have to understand about anyone who is this idea of white supremacy. People like to bang, man. People like to bang people that look different from them. That's okay.
Absolutely. That's why you got all these like weird ass fetishes. You got like there's so many different things. It's like
interracial dwarfism porn.
Interracial dwarfism pregnant babysitter porn. So specific. Everything's so specific now.
Thank you, Pornhub. Oh man, yeah.
Well, this conversation was awesome, man. We totally went longer than I was expecting. This is great.
Yeah, man.
All right. Well, check out the songs. Go support the man. Go follow him on his all his stuff, and smoke some weed in his honor. And go listen to his tunes. Go smoke some weed. Get high. Go fuck, and listen to his tunes while you do it.
Thank you. This guy got it. He gets it. He gets it, man. This guy gets it, man. Listen to rock and roll, smoke weed, and have sex. There it is. Enough said. Boom. There it is.
There you go. All right, man. Well,
great
talk with you, and we'll catch up soon. All right.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
All right. See you later. Bye.